Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Chamber of Echoes and the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and I didn't get my headphones on. How is everybody doing today? We got a great picture here. You know, I got to tell you something. This has been unbelievable. Test. There we go. This microphone is tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous. The sound quality is so much better than what we had before. I love it. I love it. I love it. Except that it does not have a mute button. And you would think that wouldn't be such a big deal, but it's absolutely catastrophic. It's just, you can't unplug it because the software is so persnickety that if you do unplug it, it won't see it again on the rebound. So I don't know what to do. I'm going to have to get an inline mute button someplace, just sort of push the button, Frank, and it gets quiet and dark. It's just terrible. You know, it's rough during the Bill Whittle live shows. When we roll a clip or something, I can't say anything because, hey, Foghorn, how are you, old dude? I can't say anything because if I do, it'll go out live. And they can't turn me off because if they turn my audio off, they turn off the outgoing audio. It's just a bloody problem. However, it is, in fact, a wonderful mic, and it sounds good. So if anybody has any solutions, love to hear about them. And, maybe on the Facebook page or something. There's got to be some kind of a mute button that goes, between the microphone cord and then the USB or USB with the disconnect. I don't know. Probably not that, because that would cause this software to crash. We had the same problem with our Petula intro today as I had on Bill Whittle Live. I just got to get this off my back, okay? This software, you queue up something at two windows. You got a preview window. You got a live window. You load whatever you want to in preview, and you guys have no way of knowing about that until it goes live. Once it goes live, it starts playing. There is something about this software. It's made by the same people, Ustream Producer and Wirecast, which is what I use for Bill Whittle Live, that when you take a clip and you put it in Premiere, a preview window, and then you put it in the live window just to either check it or get a level or something like that, it locks it there. So you then go back to, let's say, to a card or a slate or something, and you hit play, and it's halfway through. And then you can reload the file, even, is what I did for Petula. It still plays it halfway through. And there's no reset button. There's a way to say play all movies, but there's no way to say reset all movies. If there was, I wouldn't have such a problem with it. It's absolutely incorrigible. I do not know how to get around it other than not to preview anything or preview something and then just completely reboot the software or reload the software, but then it's hardly worth doing, right? So anyway, that's that. I know my life is virtually Stalingrad, isn't it? It's just terrible, the things we have to put up with here in America in the 21st century. I am just checking my papers here. We've got great questions today. Your host is very tired. He's very tired because he's been doing an awful lot. The NRA thing was probably the best decision I ever made. It was just absolutely tremendous. It got me in here every morning at bright and early, and so that got me the ability to do the live show. After that, we're working with Daily Wire to promote some of our stuff, and that means an article a day for them. And then that has been a wake-up call. It's just so much of my work has been post-production, editing, and so on. We've got a good editor who's helping out now, and we've got somebody, a media person, who's helping out now, and they're taking all kinds of work off my back, which is great. But it's kind of dawned on me lately, and when I say lately, I mean for the last 2 days since Monday, that I I could probably write a firewall a day. I mean, I just sit down and do it in an hour, and both of the ones that I did, I thought were really pretty good, would have made good firewalls, and that's a real wake up call for me. So I'll see if we can do the best of the week or something like that. I don't know how to handle it. The main thing though is I'm doing it every day. It's actually on the news cycle. I should just go in there and pound them out, not worry too much about the the post production or the you know picture elements and all that stuff. Which is, as I said, I think once before, twice before, it's a little heartbreaking because I'm coming out of television, and I like production. I like opening graphics. I like cool graphics. I like lower thirds. I like all this stuff. Not only are most internet viewers not impressed with that, there actually is a fair amount of evidence to indicate that the best thing in terms of views is for me to just hold my iPhone like this and selfie the whole thing. So anyway, that's that. So I'm going to keep doing Bill Wood Alive more or less the way we're doing it now. Starting on Monday, we just make it for first 10 minutes going to be live on Facebook, and then members only after that. I might do a free Friday or something, once a week, do the whole thing out there live. We're going to start getting calling guests and all the rest, so, it's an awful lot to launch. We're putting out, I think I'm putting out 2-3 videos a day now, at least 3. Plus an article, and on days like this, it's 4 or 5. It's quite a lot of work, and it's quite a lot of work. It has been, since I started the NRA thing, it's been a whole different thing here. It's just been more like a factory, as I was saying last time. It's just an awful lot of work is what it is. I love doing the work, but man, I've been putting in 13, 14-hour days for months and months and months, and I'm just a little cooked today, so I'm sure I'll be better after I get a little sleep. So we got some great questions as usual, and I didn't want to cut them, and at the same time I can't spend an awful long time on them because I'm just going to pass out. So I'm going to do what everybody's really been kind of suggesting or hinting that I do, and that's speed up these answers a bit. Hardcore Strata-loungers like the little walks through through the woods. We start off on one topic and we end up on mitochondria or something, but it's something I'm going to try and do here and push through these a little bit faster. Every time I say that, you can guaranteed of a 3-hour show. So let's get going with the Stratosphere Lounge episode 143. Okay. Merlin Wendelboe. Again, that's such an amazingly cool name. Has a couple of hits here, I think. But his first question is actually a very good one, and it's an appropriate question for Merlin. Why is it that we can all watch The Lord of the Rings, liberal and conservative alike, and can all tell that the forces of Mordor are the bad guys, but in real life, we have so many confused people who believe Obama and Hillary are the good guys? Merlin, it's even worse than that. If you listen to some of the principals in that movie, Viggo Mortensen, who I just think is one of the best actors ever, and what's his name? Oh boy, Sam. The guy who played Sam is the son of Patty Davis and Sean Astin. You listen to Sean Astin, they'll talk about Lord of the Rings, and they'll say the forces of Mordor are the Tea Party, and they'll say that these are and that, this whole thing is about liberals standing up to, to the forces of conservatism. One of the low points of my life, and of a couple of other people that I know too, one of the low points of the last 8 years was when the director Peter, my God, I'm losing my mind so fast. I'm telling you, I can see him. I really am getting a little worried about my memory. I truthfully am. Anyway, the director of Lord of the Rings was on the Colbert Show, and he gave him a sword from Lord of the Rings because Colbert's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and he gave Steve Colbert the sword as a way of thanking him for fighting, against the Tea Party. So, what do you say about that? Where do you go from there? It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Thank you, Peter Jackson. Thanks so much, guys. I get about 9 of them coming up now, but thank you. What do you say about that? Peter Jackson doesn't know a damn thing about the Tea Party. Doesn't know anything about American politics. But you know, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, this is the kind of beatings that you would take in the pop culture. Same thing with Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever. You know, these people come in, the people you've admired all your life, or people who you know, certainly stories you've admired for all of your life. And then you hear these people say things like this. But to sort of roundabout answer your question, Merlin, you can actually, if I was to get in an actual head-to-head debate with Sean Astin, I would say, okay, Sean, let's say that you're right. Then if you represent the forces of good in the movie, we can all agree that armed might is important, right? We can all agree that having a powerful defense is in fact the most important thing, right? We can agree that having city walls are really, really, really important, right, Sean? I mean, Minas Tirith is only Minas Tirith because it's way the hell up on a cliff and they've got gigantic big walls. So we can all agree that the good guys live in Minas Tirith, the men of Gondor, and they live in a gigantic fortress with big high walls, and they have lots of weapons, and they have catapults and all the rest. So we can agree that that's good when you're fighting the forces of evil, no matter who they may be, right? And we can also agree that it's the efforts of an individual who destroyed the ring. It wasn't a committee. It wasn't the UN. It wasn't a non-governmental agency. And they, by the way, Sean, when they went to destroy the ring, not only Frodo and Sam, but every single other character in the show, including Gandalf, were armed with the most advanced weaponry that they had at the time. So I'm going to assume that you're in favor of that too. So, you know, Merlin, such a great name for this. When you break it down for them, they're really kind of stuck because they don't believe in any of these things. Movie making is conservative by nature. It's about individuals. There is no other definition that I've ever found for the two different schools of thought here, liberals, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans. The only one that makes sense to me consistently is individualists versus collectivists. And they're all collectivists. And if they tell you that they are the heroes in the Lord of the Rings movie, then ask them when they became individualists, because the Lord of the Rings is about, essentially, strip everything away. The Lord of the Rings is about two individuals. It's about Frodo, whose purity of heart, his individual purity of heart, is what allows him to undertake a mission that no one else is pure enough to undertake. And it's about Aragorn, who has to make a decision on whether he's going to be a ranger in the shadows or whether he's going to step up and be the king. So it's about individuals, and it's not about the collective. And they didn't send the entire elf army to drop the ring. And Frodo is not like the other hobbits in the collective and all the rest. All the rest, you can just nail them on it, but you just have to take it apart piece by piece and ask them what the hell they're talking about. So that's Lord of the Rings, which, again, the reason I bring it up is you say it's easy to tell who the good guys and the bad guys are in Lord of the Rings. They think we're the bad guys in the Lord of the Rings. No fooling. Here you go, Stephen Colbert. Here's your sword to fight the Tea Party with, the sword of Aragorn. Anyway, so now to the bigger question, why can't we see this in real life? I think I've talked about this a few times. I really need to read more about it, because I think it's the answer really to pretty much everything, and it's not those two letters which haven't been spoken in a while because so many people were so sick of it. But boy, I am really losing it. What the hell was I going to say? Oh, I'm sorry, I remember now. The thing I want to study more is heuristics, and we might have talked about that on the last show. It certainly was not more than 1 or 2 shows ago. And basically, for those of you who weren't watching, or, you know, I'm sure I can get an education from every single person watching this right now. You're the smartest people I ever met. But a heuristic is essentially a way of learning. We learn through heuristics, and as I understand the concept, heuristics are little building blocks of information that then simply are connected and stacked. You don't have to relearn everything every time. Every single day, you don't have to get up and rediscover that hot stove burns your fingers. Once you learn that, that's a heuristical node in your behaviors, and you just know not to do that anymore, and so on. And the people who think Hillary and who think Obama are the good guys are people who've never had the experience of what's going on in the actual world, so they never developed the heuristics necessary to come to a different conclusion. I'm not going to just stand here and tell you this is right. I mean, although it is, I was never a modern liberal in any sense of the word. I was always loved the country. I always loved business. I always loved the military. That would disqualify me on 3 counts immediately. But I was a lot more liberal than I am today. And let's just put it that way. I thought Reagan was an idiot and all the rest of it. And having been on both sides of the aisle and having seen people on both sides of the aisle, I'm here to tell you the conservatives are almost immeasurably better informed than liberals. You can almost not put a value on it. And so what I've come to believe, to answer your question, is the reason some people see Obama and Hillary as good is because they haven't been exposed to enough of what is happening outside of Beverly Hills or New York City. The world is not America. The world is not Disneyland. It's not. Disneyland is Disneyland. America's Disneyland. But the rest of the world just isn't like that. Our soldiers and sailors and airmen, the Marines, Coast Guardsmen come back, and they know this. They may not have known it when they went, but they know it when they come back. We have a very good friend here who's watching the show live who, on a pretty much daily basis, gets to go into a room and look at what the world is actually doing right at that moment. And it's not a pretty place everywhere. In fact, it's not a pretty place in a lot of places. The left doesn't know this. They've never developed the heuristics for it. They've never gone looking for it. I go looking for it. I look for it. I want to see what's going on. I've seen a few beheadings and I've seen a few people beaten to death with cinder blocks and set on fire and all the rest of it. It's not particularly fun to watch, but it's reality. And when you get to that place, you can make a little better decision. You get better stacks of information. Your heuristics, I think, are more in line with what's actually happening out there. And they don't do it. And the reason they're uninformed is because, well, they're misinformed. They're not uninformed. It's just like Reagan said. It's not that they're stupid. It's just that everything they believe is wrong. They're misinformed, I think, because they cannot bear the reality of it emotionally. They just don't have the strength to face reality in all of its forms. They don't want people to have guns. It's not just that they don't want to have guns. They don't want anybody to have guns. And I'm utterly convinced that the reason that they don't want other people to have guns is because they know that they are either emotionally or intellectually or physically incapable of defending themselves. They know they would just turn into a little blubbering ball of cappuccino. And so if they're not prepared to or willing or able to defend themselves, then no one else should be able to as well. And I said something about this, never used it before, but it was on one of the NRA segments, I think. And I said the reason they hate people who can defend themselves is the same reason you would hate people that had an immortality pill and you didn't. If you found out that 40% of the American population was taking a pill that meant that they didn't ever age and you couldn't get one, you wouldn't want anyone to have one, would you? So there's all of that in there. But basically, ultimately, I think, just to give you the answer in one sentence, Merlin, people look at these politicians differently because their life experiences are different, and their life experiences are different because of their emotional aptitude and their intellectual aptitude and their spiritual aptitude to see what goes on in the intersections where the world is not quite so clean as where the liberals live. Hudson Carpenter has a great question. Hi, Bill, brand new member here. Sorry it took so long. Hudson, we're very, very glad to have you. Thank you very much for your membership, and don't worry about it taking too long. We just want to keep making sure we make all you guys happy out there. So thank you very much for the support. I've been having some thought lately about the future, and I'll be honest, I'm a little worried. As a young conservative, I'm infinitely outnumbered by my fellow millennials, and I'm not sure what to do about it. I don't relate to anyone my age anymore because progressive politics has taken over their lives. I cannot believe how personal it's become. I've grown distant from many friends because of it. I don't really care about politics. I care about doing the right thing and making myself a better man. I feel that my character, which I work very hard at, has afforded me the right to be able to call myself a conservative, whereas a progressive's character is defined by being a progressive, meaning who cares about what kind of person you are? You're one of us. Do you think that progressivism has become more or less an allegiance, while conservatism has remained solely a philosophy? And then he's kind enough to add, thank you so much, Bill. Can't tell you how much I admire your hard work and success. Well, that's very, very kind of you, Hudson. Here's what I would say to you. First of all, the fact that you identify as a conservative in an age group where virtually everybody are progressives means that you have courage. There's a little bit of physical courage involved because it's not nice being in a room full of people who are openly hostile, and the left gets more and more violent every day. Their true colors really do come out every day, and they're the ones that, it's so funny. It's so fun to watch leftists with black masks and hoods on, beating up people and telling them, shut up, Nazi, beating them in the streets for having an opinion and telling them to shut up, you Nazi. It almost writes itself. It'd be hilarious if it weren't so tragic. So certainly besides a little bit of physical courage, people like you have moral courage. And who's that? Is it Better Than Bunnies who relates to this question? Hopefully another younger person out there. So the first thing you have to understand is what we were just talking about before on the heuristics question. You have courage. You have to have courage because it's not easy. And as you say, progressivism is easy. Anybody can do it. Just agree on the certain. We're all in favor of abortion. We're all in favor of single-payer health care. We're all in favor of Muslim immigration. We're all in favor of all these things. And here are the things that the conservatives believe, and we don't believe that, so we're better people and smarter. So for all you millennials out there, they're starting to come in. It's enormously gratifying to me. If you're a conservative and a millennial, or even just listening to this and a millennial, you've got courage. You've got the courage to be different, and that's not as common as you would think. So much of young people's fashions, and this isn't just this generation's, all generations, is about looking, like a rebel. And so every generation determines what those individual rebels look like. I'm not one of the pack. I'm an individual. I'm a rebel. I'm not one of the herd. And every generation we figure out what that look is, and then every single person dresses exactly like that. An actual genuine rebel, in my opinion, if you wanted to impress me that somebody was really a rebel, if they came to class in jeans and a leather jacket, I'm just going to laugh at them. But if they came to class in a blue seersucker suit with a straw hat and a cane and did a little tap dance in the hallway, now that person would be an actual rebel. That person would impress me. So first of all, you have courage. Secondly, you have persistence. But the main thing I would say to all of you younger people out there is you are far more fit than your colleagues are. Far more fit. I'm not talking about physical fitness, although that's often the case. And by the way, as our friend Dave Wellman says, welcome to the Rebel Alliance, guys. We'll call you kids, but you're not kids anymore. You're actual adults now, thinking about responsibility. I did it again. I'm hoping I'm just really tired today. I'm sorry. Yes, the fitness. So here's the thing. You're fit, not necessarily physically fit, but you're fit mentally. And I mean fitness in the way fitness would apply to survival in species. The survival of the fittest. The fittest animals are the ones that are more likely to survive and pass on their genes and so on. You're mentally fit. And the reason you're mentally fit is because you have to find things that you are interested in. It's not delivered to you on a plate like the progressive agenda is. You don't get it from movies and music and comedy and all of it, the news media. It's not being pumped into your head all the time. You have a belief that certain things are true. You believe that these things are true despite the fact that everybody else seems to believe something else. And rather than doing the easy thing that almost everybody will do, the social proof is so powerful, especially for young people, that you will have the strength to not go along and find out what you think is true and actually stand back and listen. and listen to this argument, listen to their argument. Which one makes the most sense? I can't tell you how many times I've recounted this particular little thought, but for so many years I was so worried that I'd run into the liberal, gladiator, liberal Goliath, and he would just make mincemeat out of me because he understood the positions better and I hadn't been fully up on my reading. But I haven't met him or her, and I'm quite convinced that they don't exist because the arguments that they make are so weak and so easily destroyed that they're not fit. So you're very fit emotionally, Hudson, and mentally as well. The best way to think of it is your progressive friends are like pieces of dead wood that are floating down a river. And if you're going to go upstream, you've got to be a salmon. You've got to be healthy and fit and strong and courageous and all the rest of it. They're all going to be working for you someday. About that, I have no doubt. And the final thing I'll tell you is a little more personal than this previous thing. And I've only found out about this over the last several years myself, which is the single greatest thing I think that happens to me. Certainly is the greatest thing about my job. You don't know it yet, Hudson, and it's possible you will never know it, although I suspect that's not the case. You don't know it yet. But you're an example for people, and you're an example for people who are too afraid to stand up and say what you say. You are speaking for people who may seem to be against you, but they're not. They're just scared and they're timid, and they've never been given the tools to develop courage. Courage is, I don't know if anybody's born courageous. I'm certainly far more physically courageous than I was when I was younger, far more, and that's because I train myself. I think about things. What's going to happen? What would I do if? So it's all about that. There is somebody out there now, maybe many people, maybe scores of people, maybe even hundreds of people, who admire you for your example and who admire you for your strength and your courage and all those things. And you don't know it, but it's true. Ultimately, society, as I understand society, I'm an individualist. A society is simply a group of individuals. So the fact that you're making yourself an individual, all of you young people, the fact that all of you are making yourselves into individual people separate from the herd, you're doing your own thinking. That means that you have made society better because you've improved yourself. And with any luck, you'll continue to improve yourself. If I could go back in time 25, 30 years, and talk to myself when I was 25, which is more like 30 years. If I could go back 30 years, talk to myself when I was 25, I think in the space of 15 minutes, I could convince myself that I was wrong about just about everything I believed in. If myself from 30 years in the future were to come back to me, I don't think that would happen. It's not that I've gotten rigid in my thinking. It's just on the contrary. It's now I just think quite a lot about things, and I always try to test the other side and so on. I don't imagine changing this fundamental position because I think it's true. Small areas of it I change. When I find out something I believe in is not true, I move. I change my position. If the truth's over there, that's where I'm going to go. I just want to stand on the truth. You can't do anything unless you understand the truth, and you have an obligation to find it because we live in a real world, and the truth has consequences. And if you are courageous enough to go and find those truths, you'll understand the consequences, and you'll be much, much happier than people who pretend that there's nothing out there to worry them, and that everything's hunky-dory, and that people are perfectible, and that you can print money and nothing will go wrong, and all the rest of this. You have free health care and free college and all the rest. So for what it's worth, Hudson and the rest of you young people out there, I come down hard on millennials quite a lot, and hopefully you know that I'm talking about those classmates of yours. I don't think I've ever met better people than the young conservative millennials I've met. They're unbelievably smart. They're unbelievably brave, and you can just talk to them for 5 minutes and realize that they are going to be the people who are going to save this country in the future. They're going to have a much harder job than we do, and I have no doubt whatsoever that they're going to pull it off. None. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing things like these We the People videos. I want to give you guys ammunition. I did one on money. Somebody asked you about money. Here's what you can say about money. Here's what you can say about socialism. Here's what you can say about capitalism. Here's why capitalism is better than socialism. Not just more efficient, morally better. It's more fair. It's more decent. It's more honorable. All the rest of it. So thanks again for the very kind words. Steve Darrow is back, and he would like to know, can we get a state of the site address? You've obviously been working very hard on new content and pushing that out through new channels. How has that affected membership numbers? How many members do you currently have? What are the targets going forward? What are the analytics guys telling you about the new efforts? Who works for you, and what are their duties? And probably also, how long is it? To which I would reply, it's all rather personal questions, sir. Steve, I will tell you this. Some of this information I'm not going to release simply because we have competitors and it's really nobody else's business, to be honest with you. But I'll go through it and answer as much of it as I possibly can. I have been working very hard on new content and pushing it out through new channels. We've made an arrangement with the Daily Wire people who have spent literally millions of dollars in 2 years working social media and have become very, very, very good at it. And so in exchange for these articles that I've been writing for them, they're going to be pushing our work out to places, hopefully, where it hasn't been before. So we're hoping to see a whole new group of people in the wider net that we throw. In terms of how it's affected membership numbers, since I've been doing Bill Whittle Live and putting that little membership commercial in the middle of it, there has been a not spectacular but a constant and steady, modest but steady growth in the membership numbers. It's nothing to write home about yet, but if these continue this way, then we will have something to write home about. How many members do you currently have? I'm not going to answer that, but it's in the thousands. What are the targets going forward? Multiple thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands. We don't have a specific target number. I tried that and just got no response at all. What are the analytics guys telling you about the new efforts? We hired a company for a month back there, and they did all of these memes, and a lot of people didn't like them, and I didn't like them either, to be honest with you. But they took us from 80,000 Facebook likes to about 105,000 in 2-3 weeks. They're doing it again with Daily Wire. They're much more personally branded. So we got a big extension of our reach. I mean, huge extension. When you look at the number of people affected by any post now, it used to be 11,000, 12,000. Now it's 44,000, 45,000, and so on. So that's good. To my delight, the right angle numbers are getting fairly serious. When we were doing them as trifecta, a good trifecta would be 3,000. A really good one would be 5,000. There's not a right angle out there that does less than 10,000 now. They're all 5-figure shows, and some of them are 25,000. I saw one that was 45,000. That's it's a decent audience, and it's nice to know it's getting out there, so that helps. As far as the analytics go, so the people we hired before did in fact push us out a lot and open up some of those pathways quite a bit. Now we have to just get that content down there, and given the fact that I was formerly editing, moving files, posting things, writing the tags, literally physically making the thumbnails in Photoshop, I was doing nothing but post-production. But now I have a good editor who's taken over right angles, and I've got a great media guy who's been helping to produce the live show, and so I haven't touched a right angle in 2 weeks, and that used to be fully 80% of my time just getting those things out the door. So that's good. But there was something here I did want to talk about a little bit. When you say who works for you and what are their duties, we're really a pretty small shop here. It's me. Carla, many of you know, is our membership director and operations manager. She basically makes sure that the members are happy and that the bills are paid and so on. We have I'm not going to mention any of the names of people who I haven't already asked about it. We have a part-time bookkeeper who's here probably a couple hours a day now, really, as we get closer to preparing taxes. We have a producer, Neil, who, as I said, he's been here for a while, just basically, signing. I'm not signing, I sign them. He's basically mailing out the DVDs, and he's been in there for months mailing out the DVDs, and the guy's fantastic. He's just incredibly bright. He's tremendous. So he's been moving the media, and he's the one who switches the live show in the morning. So that was good. We picked up another editor. He's real good. I don't have to look at these anymore. I trust him. So combination of that part-time editor, part-time media guy, has really lifted a lot of the burden off of me. Carla is the one who basically keeps the office nailed down. Again, we have a part-time bookkeeper, and that's pretty much it. I have been over, needless to say, when we worked at PJTV, I would say we had a staff of 20 at least. 20 at least. You know, we had audio guys, we had 2 or 3 guys in the booth on the cameras, we had a director, we had multiple producers. The really swing of things there for a while. We had, I don't know, 6 or 7 producers who were doing an awful lot of the work for us. And I would just go on camera. When I'd finish, I'd walk off. I edited the afterburners, but those elements were put into the show as we recorded it. I could edit an afterburner in 15 minutes. And I just wanted to. They would have done it, but I just wanted to. So given the lack of help that we've got here, I'm really, really proud of what we're getting out the door. And now that we've got some people taking the drudgery off of me, which is not drudgery, by the way. One of the reasons I do it is because I like it so much, the editing and all the post-production. I'm finding that I can write 400 or 500 word commentary a day. That's exactly where the firewall should be. They're currently at about 800 or 900, but 500 word, 520, something like that would be perfect. And the 2 things I've written for Daily Wire are, I would have thought both made great firewalls, as I said earlier. So I didn't want to sound snippy, Steve. I'm happy to answer as many of these questions as I possibly can. The fact is, we had a huge wave of members come when PJTV closed, and then since then it's been really a good deal smaller. And then once we started putting that daily commercial into Bill Wood Alive, it's picked up noticeably and seems to be holding relatively consistently. So if we can keep those numbers going, it's great. I think we probably, I hate to be so cut and dried about it, we have a mailing list of about 8,000 people, and I suspect we've probably wrung most of the members out of that list. What we have to do now, I mean, we've approached them and talked to them about membership so many times, and if they're not a member now after all those reaches, then likely not going to be. So what we need to do now is get new people, new faces, get them on a mailing list, and pitch to them and see how many people answer the call. It's a hard model, and I find it. I don't anymore, but for most of the period of time that I've been on my own here, I found it really quite degrading and humiliating to be constantly asking for membership. And finally, I realized that no, this is actually the exact wrong way to think about it. This is, in fact, a battle of ideas that's going on out there, and you're good at ideas, Bill, and you do good work, and it affects a lot of people, and you need to go and ask for members so that you can affect more people. The more people we have as paying members at BillWhittle.com, the more work we can do. The more people we can hire, that means more writing I can do, more on-camera stuff, but mostly it means we can promote it more. We can get it out wider and get these things out there, and so that would be certainly the goal. And thanks so much for your interest in the company. Hey, look, we're back to Merlin Wendelboe again. So the liberals hate Nazis because they kill Jews and kill gays and kill basically anyone who isn't Nazi. The liberals hate the KKK because they kill Jews, kill gays, and kill just about anyone who isn't white Protestant. So why are they so intent on worshiping Muslims who kill Jews, kill gays, and kill, enslave, and oppress anyone who isn't Muslim? It is mentally inconsistent to not repudiate the whole trifecta. Pun intended, he says. That is a superb question, as usual. Sorry while I pour myself some water out of this handy and convenient little container here. It's like pouring it out of a barrel, for God's sake. Here's the thing, Merlin. Modern progressives, we talked about this just a moment ago when we were talking about the millennials and conservative millennials. Progressives are determined not to look at things the way they are. And since they don't look outside of the Disneyland force field that is America, there's a picture, I should really keep it on my desktop. It's a woodcut from the Renaissance or earlier, might actually be from the Middle Ages. And it's like a shepherd or somebody, and he's walked all the way to the edge of the universe, and it's just in a field, He's come to the place where the sky meets the earth, and this is the celestial sphere. and he's punched his head through, and he's looking around, and all of the stars and all of the light is out there. There's a lot of people who just don't want to do that. They don't want to look at what's going on out there. So they don't really know what Muslims are doing. They do know what conservatives are doing. And they do know that it's the conservatives who are people they have to interact with every day. And they do know that it's those damn conservatives that are blocking universal health care because they're so greedy. And it's those damn conservatives who are, who are so racist and that they criticize the president, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. Because they don't look at what Islam is, specifically don't look at it, and you've got to give them some credit. It's not like the media is helping us any. There was one time that I can remember in American history where the media told the truth about Islam, and that was for about 36 hours, starting on around 7 in the morning on New York time on the 11th of September 2001. That's the only time I remember seeing unvarnished coverage of what was going on. If you ever wondered why they never run that footage again, I don't wonder. I know exactly why they don't. It's a mutually beneficial, well, let me rephrase that. Progressives perceive it to be a mutually beneficial result. And this is a little bit of arcane, but I'm not going to get into the substructure of this. Here's basically what I think is going on. Progressives don't deal with Muslims. They deal with conservatives. They may have heard that Muslims kill gays or stone women to death or so on, and they're convinced that's a product of Fox News and, Rush Limbaugh. So it can be safely ignored because Muslims are wonderful people because the president told them so, and the president's got a great smile. Former president. Oh, that's got a nice ring to it. So they think that that this is not a threat. They don't look at they don't have there is some strong evidence that they do not have the threat detection elements in the brain. They say we're ruled by fear. I say we can learn from mistakes. We not just mistakes. We can learn from attacks. We can identify an enemy. That's not fear. That's just intelligence. So I don't see him. And on some level, whether consciously or subconsciously, without question, the leaders of this stuff, the people involved with CARE and the people involved with International Answer, this is all well above subconscious level for them. But it's obvious why Islam would want to be allied with the American left, because the American left is intentionally weakening the only thing that's standing in the way of Islam, which is that half of Western society that has not, got the death wish and not so muddy-headed that they think that they can just, wish for a happy world and everything will come true. So it's obvious why the Islamists want to be allied with the progressives. What's not obvious is why the progressives would want to be allied with the Islamicists. And I think the reason is almost a biological reason for them. I think it's because these jihadis have courage, and they're willing to do violent things, and they're willing to get their hands bloody. If you look at the rage that's being generated against Donald Trump and these little 20-year-old girls just screaming at the top of their lungs, their eyes are about to pop out of their heads with rage, but they're not violent and they don't know how to be. They just don't have the chops for it. But you can tell from the intensity of the hatred that they would like to have somebody who could. They'd like to have somebody who could make these people shut up. They'd like it very much, and they know that Islam has been out there and doesn't take any crap off of anybody, and so they see Islam as an ally. And what they actually said, I know this is going to sound incredible to you, but they actually do believe this. They think that this is actually a good alliance for them because they think that Islam hates the conservatives in America because we're so warlike and we are always over there with our military smashing their stuff. And so the liberals think that by being nice to Islam, when I say Islam, I'm talking about jihadis here, being nice to jihadis, being respectful of them, and giving them everything they want, and just bowing down before, not even bowing down before them, just making it clear to them that they're on their side. They think that is going to endear them to the Islamicists, and they together will then be able to sort this whole thing out once these pesky conservatives are out of the way. If you read what these jihadis write to each other, which is the only thing that matters, because everything else is either deception or a ploy, or public relations, propaganda, advertising, whatever you want to call it. But when you read their internal messages to each other, especially during the Iraq War, messages between al-Zarqawi in Iraq, al-Qaeda in Iraq, going back and forth with Osama bin Laden, you find that, on the contrary, what the Islamists hate about the West, and especially about America, is the lasciviousness of it, the lewdness, the pornographic sexuality of it, the lack of courage, the lack of manhood. They hate the weakness of it. They hate the licentiousness of it. They all they see are lazy, fat, stupid, drunk people with gambling addictions or porn addictions or alcohol addictions, who are simply somehow living in this magnificent palace that they don't deserve to be in, and now they have to gonna just come in and kick us out, and then they'll have the wonderful palace, the magnificent palace, and all the rest of it. So when you actually listen to what they say to each other, you find out that they do not love liberals. On the contrary, it's the gays, the feminists, the atheists that they hate the most. They're the ones that they hate the most. The ones that they respect and could actually live with are American conservatives. We would be treated as dhimmis, which is a second-class citizen. But since most conservatives believe in God and the same God as they believe in, although it'd be hard to believe if you just looked at the output, then they would be willing to work with us. And they have respect for our soldiers, because our soldiers are kicking their asses, and they're doing it in their backyard. So they have a lot of respect for half of this country, but the half of the country they respect is our half and not their half, and the progressives can't see it, and they won't see it. They don't want to see it. I'm very pleased that it was Lenin who coined this term, and I'm very pleased about who he coined it about. When he was talking about Westerners that were supporting what he was doing because they actually thought that he was in it for what he said he was in it for. He actually believed that he was doing it to help the downtrodden. He referred to Western supporters of his regime as useful idiots. And that's what they are. They're useful idiots. They control our media. They control all the information we get. They control our culture. And it's a useful idiot who's basically teaching America that there's nothing here worth defending, that we're just nothing but slave owners and Indian murderers, and that the whole country was built by people of color, and that there's just a history of that we need to be destroyed. We deserve it. We deserve to be destroyed. We're the worst people in the world, and we're killing the planet too. Let's throw that in there as well. So anybody that's preaching propaganda to the enemy is a friend of yours, and the jihadis don't need to have anti-American propaganda. The anti-American propaganda is generated just over the hill behind me here in Hollywood, California. So all these things together, I think, is the thing. I can tell you one thing though. Matthew, if I had these progressives for an hour, I would get them over this love of Islam very quickly, and I wouldn't have to say a word. I would just show them movie clips for an hour. I'd show them homosexuals being pushed off of buildings and hitting the ground, not cutting away so nobody gets upset. And I would show them stoning women to death, and I would show them beating people, and I would show them cutting off their hands. I've seen all of this. I'd show them a bunch of videos of people being executed, head chopped off in Saudi Arabia, or cut off with a knife in Chechnya, or done in Iraq, Iran, Syria, all the rest of it. And then I'd talk a little bit about their child-rearing practices and all the rest, and I would just show them the brutality of the religion as it's practiced, at least in the Middle East. And after an hour, I think they'd pretty much be... Well, first of all, they'd be sick to their stomach. They'd be vomiting, because this stuff is hard to watch. You really have to... You can build up a resistance to it. That was one of the reasons why I did it so much. I didn't want to be incapacitated at the scene of an accident or something, I just want to be, oh my God, look at all the blood. Somebody's got to be able to take action, and so I didn't want to be incapacitated by that. But a good dose of reality will do it. And we had a liberal graphic designer over at PJTV, and we got along fine most of the time, but she was saying something about this and that, why you're so, this Muslim hatred, this Islamophobia is just really awful. And I went and got a picture. I got some video, which I happen to have handy, on a segment of them hanging homosexuals by construction cranes in Iran. I put it on. I said, take a look at this for a second. Look at it on YouTube. And she wouldn't look at it. No, I'm not going to look at it. Why not? I'm just not going to look at it. Well, why won't you look at it? The fact that you don't look at it colors your perception of it. And you've already proved my point. The reason you won't look at it is because it's horrible. And it's horrible. And that's why you don't want to look at it. And so we can come to an agreement that some of these people are horrible, brutal people, and they don't belong here, and I don't know if they belong anywhere, to be honest with you. This one's a little bit eclectic, but it's kind of cool. Brian Yoder has a question, and it was a 3-paragraph question. I just took the first one, Brian. Sorry about that. It basically said, Bill, given your interpretation of the double slit experiment, let me just stop right there. There's an experiment done where they pass a beam of light through a slit and then another slit, and the beams of light, the actual light, behaves differently whether or not somebody's watching. I know that sounds absolutely batty, barmy, mad, but it's true. I think I have this right. It's either this or the reverse. I don't actually remember, but I'm pretty sure that if there's nobody there and the light passes through the slit, it behaves like a wave, but if somebody starts observing it, it behaves like a particle. It changes its nature based on whether or not somebody's watching it. That's apparently true. It really is. This was a huge, huge wake-up call for me. So, given your interpretation of the double slit experiment as demonstrating that consciousness can have an effect on matter, have you ever wondered why or if someone has tried to see what kind of consciousness would cause the effect? For example, would a baby be enough? What about a frog or an amoeba? What about a sleeping person or a corpse, a video camera, a stone? It's a profoundly good question. At what level does observation, because it appears to be the act of observation that does it, that changes reality. And I don't mean like you get in there with an electron microscope and in order to see something you bombard it with neutrons. I'm saying you just look at it and the result changes. The effect appears to have, this is even more mind-blowing, honestly. It appears to happen if there's a camera set up. In other words, if you, I don't know how they determine how it's behaving if no one's observing it, but there is some way that they do it. It's probably something where they're getting some kind of result, and then they turn on a camera and nothing else changes, and it changes not just its volume. It doesn't change just quantitatively. It changes qualitatively. It becomes something else when somebody's watching it. And my understanding is, I may be incorrect about this, but I suspect not. My understanding is that just the act of turning on a video camera has this effect. So clearly, you've got a really good point here. I had assumed that it was the intelligence that was somehow influencing it through ways that are very, very difficult to explain right now. But it turns out that it may be, again, this world is it's not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine. It's possible that the television camera recorded things as waves until somebody looked at the video, at which point the recording changed to show particles. That's no more unbelievable than anything else. If it turns out that cause and effect are in place the way they appear to be in place, and cause and effect is an illusion too, cause and effect, this cause, that is just simple motion through a fourth dimension that we can't see. But if it turns out that a video camera does it, then there is something about the act of observing. And when you talk about taking it down, Brian, to an amoeba or a frog or something, I think this is called the anthropic principle. There's a school of thought that says, no, you're absolutely right. When there's nothing but amoebas, the Earth is simple. There's nothing there. As these creatures become more sophisticated, the universe has to become more sophisticated because it's more observed. And all these probability waves, all these quantum states of both or neither, basically get compressed when somebody looks at something. And this theory basically says that when you're, if you got a caveman with a functional IQ of 20 or something, then the stars are in fact little twinkling lights in the sky. When you put a telescope on them, they have to become more complex because they're being observed at a higher level. And the more delicate our instrumentation is, the deeper we're able to look and the more complex the universe has to be. It becomes complex as a result of the observation. Now, that doesn't make a lick of sense to us in our little world, but there's a lot of things that don't make a lick of sense in our world, and things like, time slowing down when you approach the speed of light, and spaceships compressing as you approach the speed of light, all the rest of it. But one thing that it does lead me to think about, and I like to follow this chain of thought, and that is this. It might be better to think of things in completely opposite directions of the way that we think of them. In other words, we think that the universe exists so that consciousness can be created through evolutionary processes and so on. But it's possible that consciousness exists and consciousness creates the matter by organizing information. So instead of the universe being made out of mass and energy, there's a possibility that the universe is made out of information. Some people say we're a giant simulation, and it seems unlikely to me, but then again, what does that mean? If somebody wound this thing up and started it, okay, that's fine. But I become more and more convinced that the structure of the universe is information. And the more complex that information gets, the more complex the universe becomes as a result of the observation. We know that looking at something changes the outcome, and the more looking we do, which is in a more complex way, the more the outcome should be changed, and the more the resolution should get finer and finer and finer as we get better and better instrumentation. The universe will have to resolve itself down into ever finer little pieces, ever more complex pieces, and so on. Now, some people think this is all just nonsense. And it certainly sounds like nonsense, but if you pass a beam of light through two slits, they behave like waves if no one's looking, and they behave like particles if they are. So there's experimental evidence for you. And experimental evidence is the gold standard of people who live in the real world and try to look at life rationally. Matthew Lloyd has a question, and it's, should we be concerned that union bosses now think Trump is fantastic? For decades, they've been joined at the hip with the Democratic Party. Have they changed, or has Trump? The short answer is that Trump has changed, but the question is, should we be concerned about this? And my feeling is yes and no. We should be concerned that so many unions have very shady financial arrangements, let's just say. We should be concerned that a lot of unions force their members to pay their dues. And we should also be concerned with the fact that the history of unions and the intersection of unions and government has been one of ongoing, almost perpetual corruption since the invention of private unions. Now, with that said, the Democrats have hurt themselves in a way that they clearly do not understand. I think conservatives understand much better than progressives just how badly the progressives have hurt themselves. 4 months ago, we were talking about the death of the Republican Party, the never-Trumpers and the Trump people in a perpetual civil war, the Republican Party splitting into two parts, a conservative party and then a kind of a rhino party, and the Democrats would be ruling for the foreseeable future, and they were just one solid block and all the rest of it. Well, it turns out none of that was true. It's a Democratic Party that's in absolute disarray. They've lost 1,000 seats under Barack Obama, state seats in various legislatures, 1,000. They've lost governorships. They've lost all this stuff. Their party's fallen apart, but that's just the outcome. That's just the metric that you can measure how badly the party's coming apart. That's not the cause of it, though. The cause of this enormous decline in Democrat influence and a continuing decline in Democrat influence every single day is that the Democratic Party didn't just lose a voting bloc to Donald Trump. They lost their identity, and you can pretty safely say they lost their soul. The Democrats, for 100 years at least, have positioned themselves as the party of the little guy. We're the people that stand up against these rich and powerful millionaire capitalists. You need to vote Democrat if you're a working person because we're the only people that will stop you from being chained to your coal pick and being shuttled off into the mines, and all the rest of it. So it's not just that they lost the average American working person. They didn't just lose that block, which cost them the presidential election and is costing them down the road. When you lose the working man, the Democrats have lost their brand. They've lost their soul. They've lost their identity. They've lost everything they believe in. And, it's not good if you're a Democrat. It's good for the country, but it's certainly not good for the Democratic Party. So while I'm a little concerned about the corruption involved with high-level Democratic donors and unions and all the rest of it, I think that this is a tremendous opportunity. And every time I say an opportunity, I'm obviously talking about a political opportunity, but I would never want a political opportunity that was good for the Republican Party or conservatives and bad for the country. If I thought that were the case, I would support it. What I think is interesting is Donald Trump has spoken to these people in a way that the Democrats have not, because the Democrats for 20 years now, certainly the last 8 years, starting with Clinton, I want to say, they've drifted further and further away from ordinary working people. The Democrats are now the party of millionaires, like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Zuckerberg. They're the party of movie stars and rock stars and Beyonce and George Clooney and all the rest. And they're the party of the LGBT community. That's all they've got in their pocket solidly. Donald Trump stole some black votes away from him, some Hispanic votes. If we could get the act together and get the message out there, we'd have all of them. But they've lost something they've lost the ring, is what they've lost. They've lost the ring. They're like Gollum in a cave. They don't even know it's missing yet. But when they do, when it finally dawns on them, they're going to start howling like Gollum, and then they're going to spend a lot of time looking for that ring. And I don't think they're going to find it because they're determined not to. They are determined to continue believing what they believe, and despite the fact that it doesn't work. And so there you go. That's what happens when you have that kind of an ideological religion in front of you. So I think it's very, very good for Republicans to connect to working people. If we could become the party, you know who the key is here? I'll tell you who just flew into my head. We need to be the party of Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe should be our graven image. We should create a gigantic golden statue of Mike Rowe. If you don't know who Mike is, he's the host of Dangerous Catch, and he's just one of the most American guys I've ever seen or met. Proud to say that I met him a few times, and I'm even more proud to say he's a fan of the work that I did. But what Mike Rowe is he's a conservative, but Mike Rowe is so effective. He's so charismatic and so kind, basically, and gentle. But Mike Rowe is saying, no, working people have decency and working people have integrity, and there's not something wrong with them. It's not like they're too stupid to go to college. So Mike Rowe is our guy, and if I was going to nominate anybody for president after Donald Trump, it'd be Mike. I think Mike would win 80%. I can't even estimate how much of the country Mike Rowe would win. He'd win 80, 90% of the country. Every single conservative in the world beat behind him, 100%. His ability to connect with common people. He did the show called Dirty Jobs. He would be in a tannery, and he would be underneath the cities scooping out giant clumps of sewage. And he'd be in a factory where they're processing chicken guts, and he would be with exterminators who have to go in and attack a giant, nest of hornets that are the size of an entire room. He's the absolute perfect thing. And watching him now on the internet with here's how I heard it. It's just him and a laptop, and he talks into the camera, and his voice and his mannerisms so calm and strong and nice. Mike Rowe is the future of this movement. He's everything that we should be, and he's also everything that we don't have. He's handsome, charismatic, smart, hardworking, modest, dedicated, and relaxed. It's an absolute amazing, amazing thing. That's where we should be going, Matthew. We should be taking Mike Rowe out there and winning all of the working people in this country over to the Republican Party, because it's a chance for you as an individual to do better. We want you to keep more of your money. How hard is this? We want you to keep more of your money, and we want you to do what you want to do, as long as you don't hurt anybody else. How can you not sell this? We found a way somehow. Mitch McConnell could find a way to not sell Disneyland to kids. You know, if Mitch McConnell was in charge of advertising for children for Disneyland, then you would never ever see another child in the Magic Kingdom again. So it's just the way it is. Chris Taylor has a question. Instapundit linked to an article about AI fighter pilots that beat artificial intelligence, beating human fighter pilots in popular science. National Defense Magazine recently had an article on drone swarm research with advances in beam weapons, the next generation AWACS, it's airborne warning and control, I want to say. The giant former 707s with the huge rotating radar plate on the top. But essentially what they are is they're airborne air traffic control centers. The next generation AWACS will likely be able to destroy any aircraft it can detect, like a big flying battleship. With all of these advances and more, what do you see the job of fighter pilot being like in 25 years or 50? Or will it be as obsolete as the job of ball turret gunner and Zeppelin linesman? I have thought about this since I was 20. And I have, over the course of the last 35, 37 years, something like that, done every single thing that I could to justify, find some reason why a human pilot would be better. Well, you couldn't break the data link. Well, this, that. It's still trying to find wild unpredictability and so on. I'm still holding on to that. However, there are two things that we need to understand about artificial intelligence pilots that unmanned pilots can do, unmanned aircraft can do, that manned aircraft just simply cannot do. The most important thing that they can do is they can pull unbelievably high G turns. An unmanned aircraft can pull a 12, 15, 20 G turn. I've seen gliders. This is a very strange thing that Bert Rutan showed me. I can't even tell you how to Google it, but basically I think it's something like if you Google high-speed gliders looping or something. Anyway, what's happening is there's a ridge mountain coming up. There's mountain air coming up the ridge, and these guys throw a glider with remote control. It's a radio-controlled glider, and this thing just goes around, and it goes faster and faster and faster and faster, and it hits speeds of 400 or 500 miles an hour. I mean, it's almost supersonic. And they calculated the load on this glider is something like 50, 60 Gs in the turn, something like that. Our friend Vipercheck, who ought to know, says that there's a 30 G turn, 39 G turn. Look, the reason the F-16 was so revolutionary, among many, many reasons it was so revolutionary, was that the F-16 had the pilot recline at a pretty good angle. And the reason that's important is because the airplane can turn far tighter than the pilot can. The F-16 aircraft and all modern fighters can turn far more aggressively than the pilot can maintain consciousness on. The reason that they're reclining, even though it's a little bit of a recline, the reason that's important is because when you're in a high G turn, all of your blood wants to go outside of the turn, which is where your feet are, and the blood literally drains out of your head, and you lose consciousness. You lose your vision first, and then you lose consciousness. And through a series of extremely interesting and clever bits of experience, we've been able to increase pilots' ability to take a high G turn. I want to say that maybe the highest G turn you saw in World War II, if I had to guess off the top of my head, I'd probably say 4 or 5 Gs, something in that neighborhood. But after World War II, when we started to get into fighter jets and all of the excess air pressure and electricity and so on that a jet engine generates, they developed something called a G suit, which I don't know if this is still true. Foghorn will tell me in a second. They used to call it, back in the 60s, used to call it a poopy suit. Basically, it's something that fits over your flight suit. You put your flight suit on, your parachute on, and then you step into something that looks quite a bit like very tight-fitting fishing waders, the plastic pants you wear to go out in the river, except they've got, huge parts of it are not covered. But in any event, what happens is you get into your jet, you fire the thing up, you plug this connection into the air pressure port, in the cockpit. And what happens is, as you start a high G turn and all the blood wants to leave your head and goes down into your legs, these things inflate. They inflate, and by inflating, they constrict your legs. They literally just squeeze your legs. And what they're doing is they're making it harder for blood to get down there. They're increasing the local blood pressure in your legs, so the blood doesn't have anywhere to go. It has to stay in your head. That helps for a couple of Gs. And then there's a maneuver that pilots do, and again, our friend Foghorn, I deeply admire, spent a lot of time in F-16s. He'll tell me what this is called, but there's also a way to breathe that fighter pilots do, and if you watch them, it's almost like they're compressing air. It's like they take a deep breath, and then it's almost like they hold it down. It's like, and they're basically compressing this air into their lungs so that they can get as much oxygen out of it as possible. But with all of this done, no one can take a 9G turn for more than 10, 15 seconds. It's the best they can do. Airplanes without pilots can turn at 20 Gs, 30 Gs, which means that they're turning so much more sharply, they're so much more maneuverable, that there's simply no way that a human can catch up with them. That's one thing. But I suspect the other thing's even worse. For those of you out there who are pilots, you'll be able to relate to this. It fills you with a sort of a quiet, burning rage when you turn on an autopilot and you discover how much better that thing flies your airplane. It's just enough to make you really quite angry. If you've ever had a GPS or anything that printed out your course, it showed you where you were. Even a straight line course is, it's a little windy like this. It's natural. There's just all kinds of little things, wind and, changes and changes in throttle and gasoline, weight of the airplane, all that stuff. But when you have, it's called anti-G straining maneuver. It's called the G strain. Thank you very much, Foghorn. But when you watch an autopilot fly your airplane, if you look at the track, it's like somebody drew it with a ruler. And the reason it's so good is because this little machine looks at where you are 30 times a second. Something like that. 30 times a second. It's looking at where you are, where you should be, and it's making controls, movements very subtly. And it's absolutely better than a human can fly it. Enormously better. Which is kind of embarrassing if you really want to know. And so the reason I think that human fighter pilots are probably doomed is because as they get the internal technology correct enough, you can't fly it by wire. You can't have it be essentially a super big remote control airplane that you're flying from a base like a Predator. Predator drone is essentially a giant radio controlled airplane. It's like the thing that those guys fly every weekend. There's a guy with little things and he's flying this thing, and it turns out the data link is not just a couple hundred yards, it's several thousand miles. But basically the Predators are flown by humans looking at TV screens. The Global Hawks, the bigger ones, reconnaissance airplanes, much higher, much longer duration. They can pick probably 7 days, I want to say. Those things will fly from here to Australia and back without any human intervention at all. They find the runway center line, they taxi down to the end of the runway, they wait for an electronic clearance, they take off, they climb, they navigate, they circle. They have a pre-programmed course and they just do it. Yeah, even our friend Foghorn, who's been a fighter pilot, says that human fighter pilots are going the way of the dinosaur. I suspect that's probably true. So, as these artificial intelligence algorithms, as the software gets smarter and smarter, you're going to be facing, if you're a human pilot, you're going to be facing an enemy aircraft that can turn 10 times, 20 times, 100 times tighter than you can in a turning fight. And you're going to be facing an enemy who is making calculations on the relative state of both of these airplanes 30 times a second or more. Yeah, why not? This is what this show's all about. I've talked about this before, but you never know who's watching. One of the most remarkable men that ever lived was an Air Force colonel named John Boyd. Somebody described him as the most important man you've never heard of, and John Boyd was a fighter pilot instructor at Nellis Air Force Base in the 60s. Never flew in combat, never shot down a plane. But he was called 42nd Boyd because Boyd would take you up to the practice area above the green spot out in the Nevada desert there. And he'd set you up at 20,000 feet, 15,000 feet, something like that. and he would allow you to get on his 600 yards back in the perfect position for a gun kill, because we're talking about guns now. And then he would say, "Fight's on," and if he did not shoot you down with guns in 40 seconds, he would give you $20 and buy you a steak dinner. And he did it 130 times against the best pilots in the world, and no one ever beat him. He did it every single time. So when you have that kind of mastery over something, this is not coincidence, and this is not luck. This is seeing something on a level that nobody else has ever seen. So Boyd got that kind of proficiency because he studied each individual aircraft, and he looked at them very carefully. He did something called energy maneuverability studies. And for example, he found that I'm just making some of these numbers up, he found that the American F-4 Phantom, big airplane, twin engine, big and slow, and not slow, sluggish, that the best turning speed, the best way you could get an F-4 around would be at 450 knots, let's say. And going up against a MiG-17, which has a much tighter turning circle, but at least certainly in the Korean War, but did not have hydraulically boosted controls, which meant that it's hard for a pilot to haul it around at high speed. At low speed you can maneuver it fine, but the faster you're going, the more pressure's on those control surfaces. And so what he found was if you could get the fight to 450 knots, the F-4 would be turning at its maximum turn rate. That's if you went any slower, it would turn slower. If you went at a lower airspeed, it would take longer to do this. And if you went at a higher airspeed, it would take longer to do this. 450 knots, exactly whatever the number was. So Boyd basically said, look, these MiGs, these light little MiGs are creaming us. They're killing us. They're getting inside our missiles. Our missiles suck. 1 out of 10, hit, something like that. They're getting inside our missile range, and then they're creaming us with guns. We didn't have guns. We didn't even have guns on the first Phantoms that went to Vietnam. Most of the time in Vietnam, the Phantom didn't have guns. Neither did the Thunder Chief, I don't think. So in any event, Boyd looks at how all these airplanes work. Each one is individually different. Each model of aircraft has its own numbers for best turn, rate of climb, ability to accelerate, top speed, top altitude, all of it. And he just studied it all and put them together. He said, this airplane has its best chance against that airplane right here. And he would say to American pilots, if you're going to get in a turning fight with a MiG, you do that turning fight at 450 knots or you're going to die. And that's exactly what they did. They took it up to 450 knots, and the Vietnamese pilots didn't have the physical strength to haul back on the stick to keep their aircraft in a 450 knot turn. And our kill ratio went from 2-to-1 to 7, 8, 10-to-1, something like that. So there it is. But the thing that Boyd did was even more amazing than that. He realized he had that kind of mastery when he was out there being 42nd Boyd. And then he thought about what it is that he actually does for a living. What was he doing? Why was he so good at this? And he knew it couldn't just be luck, and it couldn't just be that he was that much smarter than these other people, because these were experienced combat pilots, many of them with kills in Vietnam or Korea. So he tried to figure out why he was so successful at this, and he realized that he was processing information faster than they were. And this is the critical thing to understand here. It's not that Boyd was making better decisions than the other pilot, but he was making faster decisions than the other pilot. And what that means is that if you've got two guys in a turning fight and one person does one maneuver that takes him into one position, another guy does something, another maneuver takes him to another position, now the positions have changed, and he called it the OODA loop. It was OODA. It's something that you just would keep cycling. OODA is orient. Where are you? What is your position? Where are you headed? What's the airplane doing? Observe. Where's he? What's he doing? Decide. What is your plan? What are you going to do? And act. Do it. So, where am I? Where is he? What's the best thing to do? Do it. Pretty much it. And what he realized was the person that could do that the fastest was going to win every time, because it didn't matter if you made a bad decision. Let's say that you're the blue airplane, there's a red airplane. There's the merge, and you both start your turn, and so on. You observe, you orient yourself, you know where you are. You observe, you see where he is. You decide what you're going to do, and you act. Let's say you make a bad decision. You make a decision that's actually advantageous to this guy. By the time that he's realized that he's now in a better situation than he was, you've already gone through this crisis and gotten out of that bad situation. And as this little adventure continues, what you find is the faster you're making decisions, the more disoriented this other opponent becomes. And the more disoriented he becomes, the slower his thinking becomes. And then it just becomes just a, it's just a shooting fish in a barrel. He simply figured out that the person that can make the decisions the fastest, that can constantly reset the clock. Where am I? Where is he? What do we do next in order to win? Do it. The person that could cycle through that OODA loop fastest was the one who won. Didn't have to be the best decisions. You just, because it's self-correcting. You make a bad decision and you correct it instantly. That's okay. And it was just monumental breakthrough. And it works in business. It works in finance. It works with the Army, for God's sakes. And it works everywhere. It just constantly getting inside his decision loop. You're moving faster than he is. And so if you make a mistake, you can correct the mistake. If he makes a mistake, you're all over him. So the reason I find that a little depressing for the future of fighter pilots is if you've got an airplane that can turn 10 times faster than my airplane can, and on top of that, the airplane's pilot is observing, orienting, deciding, and acting 30 or 40 times a second, you're in a heap of trouble. You're in a heap of trouble. I suspect there'll always be manned aircraft in one form or another. You know what? I don't actually. I don't. I just don't think so. I think that by the way, if you build an airplane that's going to carry a human in it, all airplanes are a compromise between weight and range, speed, all of that. But the one thing that is always good, a universal good, is lightness. And a universal bad in an airplane is heaviness, because the fundamental job of an airplane is to lift something off the ground. And the more effort you're doing to lift that weight off the ground, the less lift and thrust you have available to do other fun things. Now, if you're building an airplane for a human in it, it has to be a certain size. It has to be big enough for a person to sit in it. But more than that, it also has to carry oxygen tanks. It has to be, the cockpit has to be armored against ground fire. You got a whole lot of extra stuff that you got to throw on an airplane to put a person inside it. And drones don't need that stuff. I really don't see how we can beat them. As much as it pains me to say so, although maybe I'll finally live long enough to be on a par with all of these former fighter pilots. We'll all get ourselves long easies, and then you will all be in a heap of trouble. I'm telling you, you're going to be in a heap of trouble if we all go to long easies. Great question. I love technical questions like that. Doug Shannon. And we're almost done. How about that? That's amazing. Doug Shannon said, it's pretty amazing. He asks, there's the AI pilot. Sorry about that, Chris. Doug Shannon said, I saw the We the People 2.0 socialism video today. Loved it, and it can't be made public soon enough. As someone who coincidentally was born in the millennial generation, I can't help but compare the football field race analogy to the YouTube streaming industry. Each streamer is made a success by their own merits and how much effort they want to put into it. Plus, views cannot be redistributed. Does this version of the analogy convey the same message as the foot race in a way that the next generation of voters can relate to? It absolutely does. When I did Money, I tried to explain what is being exchanged. If I pay a kid to mow my lawn and we exchange $40, what is it that we're exchanging? What is it? And I believe it's value. It's not work, because I don't care. If he's got a riding mower, if he's got a hand-push mower, or he's got a stand-up motorized mower, I don't care. I want my yard mowed, it's $40. So it's not effort and it's not time. I don't care particularly if he does it fast or slow. If he does it in twice the time, it's not really relevant to me. I just want my yard mowed and I'm ready to pay $40 for it. And I thought it was a great analogy. And the problem is, and I knew this as I was writing it, is how many kids mow lawns these days. But I couldn't think of anything else that was quite that clear. The streaming video thing, the business about not being able to share views, is really good. But the reason I picked the football field analogy, and the reason that video took so long to get done, was that you really need to see the animation. I did all that animation personally. I took 10 random people from one of these, clip art things of random people, and I put them on the one goal line, and I start them, and then you can just see as you watch the animation, you can watch people pulling away, and some going faster and some falling behind. You can see these unequal results getting more unequal as the race goes on, and then ding ding ding, ding 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 ding, crossing the finish line at different times. And then when I get to socialism, I ran the exact same race. I used the exact same numbers, and the same people leading out of the gate were leading out of the gate. And all I did on that animation was, when they got to the 50-yard line, the second they got to the 50-yard line, I would put an arrow on them. And then I took the keyframe wherever they were at the 50 and made sure that the keyframe that matched crossing the line was equal to the slowest runner. So basically, if you watch the animation, you see 9 people just bursting out of there ahead of the 10th person. And every single one of the 9, the second they get to the 50, this arrow comes and starts slowing them down. And as they approach the finish line, this difference in speed slowly merges into one line so that they all cross the finish line at the same time. And it's just a great visual analogy. Anything you can do to personalize these messages, though, Doug, is important. Anytime you can do something that the kids can relate to, it's really important. That's why I talk about things like turning in your cell phones. That's why the analogy I use was, you talk about capitalists and somebody having 5 homes. Well, how many songs do you have on your iPhone? 750? They're $1 each, right? Why didn't you just give $700 to the poor people in the world and keep 50 songs? You can't listen to 750 songs at the same time. In fact, you probably get by on 20. So why do you have 750 songs? How repulsive. You're making the exact same decision that these rich 1%ers are making, and they're just making it on a somewhat smaller scale, and they're doing the same things for the same reasons. So anything you can do to bring that home to young people is really, really good. And I will remember the YouTube example about hits and how you cannot distribute hits, and it's like, it's easy. The best player in the NBA is worth more money than the worst player in the NBA. Even social justice warriors can understand that one. And finally, how about that? Finally, that's Matthew Lloyd. Is that back again? Who says, you have over 100,000 people following you on Facebook. What if each one of those people contributed just $1 a month towards winning back our culture? What impact could you make with $100,000 a month? Matt, I don't know, because I would be gone. I'd be living in Idaho. I'd have my own Viper jet, and you would never see me again. I'd like to think that were actually true. But if this organization were making $100,000 a month, which is within its reach, certainly we're nothing close to that yet, but it's within its reach. The first thing that would happen is, right now we're in a bit of a bottom of a bucket. We're a little bit trapped by our finances here, because we need more members in order to hire more people, and we need to hire more people in order for me to be able to do more videos in order to get more members. So the first thing I would do with $100,000 a month is to hire another 2 people, maybe another editor and another media person, so that I didn't have to touch anything that consists of housekeeping duties. I didn't touch anything. The only thing I do is write and perform, and that's all. And then the rest of most of that money I would put into promotion. It's amazing how much viewing you can buy for $1,000 in things like social media. I just put the resources into getting it seen. For years now, we've been a business, not just me, everybody, just about everybody. It's starting to change now. But for years, we were people who had a product, and we didn't, and our marketing and advertising, our sales plan, in fact, our entire sales strategy was this. If I ran Nike the way that I run BillWhittle.com, or any of the other ones for that matter, it would come down to something like this. I'm going to make the best shoes in the world, and then when they're finished, I'm going to personally hand carry the boxes out to the loading dock, and I'm going to leave them there, and I'm going to hope that somebody comes by, unannounced, picks up a pair of shoes, and decides to leave some money where the box was. And nobody even knows the shoes are there. We don't have a realistic advertising plan. We didn't anyway. We don't have a realistic marketing plan. Or depending on people's vision, I guess, because you're giving away most of what you do, and the reason you need members is so that you can continue to give it away. That's kind of the paradox here. There's a lot of people that have been watching this stuff. Somebody somebody calculated, wasn't me, it was something like 50 million hits on YouTube and tens of millions on Facebook. And that's a large number of people in terms of my total reach. And all of the stuff that I've been doing for 8, 9 years now has been, essentially all of it has been free and paid for by what used to be less than 1,000 people for 2 years. It's better now. But yeah, and when you think about that, when you think about 1,000 people basically paying for what 50 million people are watching for free, it's sobering. Now, before anybody gets so upset about, or starts feeling too guilty about this, this is all new. Not just new to me or you. It's just new. It's new on the earth. Television is free, and the internet is free, and television on the internet should be free, but it's not. It costs money, and there are a couple ways to do that, to get that money. But the only model that I've seen that works for a relatively limited budget is the membership thing. Because frankly, if you're dealing with advertisement, you're getting what is it? I don't know if it's $6 or 6 cents a click. I don't even know the numbers. If you have huge numbers of viewers, you can actually make pretty good money by using ads and that's your financial model. But if you don't have that kind of reach, if you don't have the resources to be posting 20, 30 things a day and make your site a destination site, then the ad revenues are simply inconsequential. They're not nothing, but they're probably $1,000 a month, something like that. You can't do this on that. So rather than having counting a click at 6 cents or whatever, what we're doing is we're looking at people who make the decision to become members as they're essentially, a member is the equivalent of 100,000 viewers or more. Maybe it's close to 1 million viewers. One member, the amount of money they pay, is worth hundreds of thousands of free views. So it's hard to jar people. It's hard to make people pay for things that they've been getting for free. And to be perfectly fair, it's an understandable reaction. Why would you pay if it's free? There's a small number of people, and many of them are watching the show right now, who understand that somebody has to do it, and they step up and do it. And I'm very grateful, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are very grateful. I know for an absolute certain fact that that if I go on a speaking engagement, I'll hear this many times at the event, and often I'll hear it in airports. People will just come up to me and say, "Are you Bill Whittle?" And I say, "Yes." And they say, "I just wanted to thank you for the work you do and make me feel like I'm not alone out there," And so the fact that these videos are free means they reach a lot of people, and they're having an impact, I hope. But there is no other model that we can use. If I could slap a commercial into the middle of this show or into the middle of Bill Whittle Live, or put a commercial at the front or the end of Firewalls, and those commercials would return anything like the kind of money we need, I wouldn't be dealing with this membership thing at all. Because it's a hard thing to sell. It's hard to sell people. It's hard to get people to pay for things if other people are getting it more or less for free. Now, with all that said, I think that the live show is the best membership bait that we've ever come up with. Certainly, I mean, if you're paying, if you're thinking about paying to watch me or listen to me, then listening to me every day for half an hour on the stories that are happening that moment is probably the most valuable thing I have to offer. And we'll see. But regardless of what happens with the membership and Bill Whittle Live stuff, the stuff that really matters, stuff like the socialism video and capitalism and money and all the rest of it, that goes out free for people to see. It's really, really important. We don't charge people. We don't show the important work to members only. The members understand that the reason that they're members is so that this can get out wide. And by the way, many times we'll have members-only content. Usually it's a right-angle show or something. And we'll often, not that often, but every 4 or 5 weeks or something, we'll do a show for members that many members either write to us in person or put a comment up saying, you need to make this public. You need to let other people see this. And what they're essentially doing is they're they're opening up their value. They're basically saying, yes, I get this and other people don't because I pay and they don't, but it's important. Now, James Burkholtz up there says that Dave Rubin uses Patreon, and I got to tell you, there are a lot of things out there that I just don't have time to understand. I know how Patreon works, and apparently he's making a living at it, so that's something we would look into. Patreon is a way, it's like a tip jar, basically, and if you like a video, you can just put whatever you want in that jar for that video. And Dave, I think we're talking about the same guy who was at our, I was sharing some time with him at the election night coverage over at Daily Wire. He seems to be making a living doing that, and so, you know, as a matter of fact, to be perfectly honest with you, James and the rest of you guys, it's something I'm going to do first thing in the morning, because there are so many ways of doing this, and it's enough work to keep one person busy. Just believe me, getting the stuff out the door. It's and the nice thing about Patreon is it's not an either or. It's not like you have to go either membership or Patreon. I've given Kickstarter and crowdfunding support, and a couple of good long hard thoughts. I'm trying to save that for the films, I think. By the way, I think on Friday I am going to do. I'm going to introduce you to some people that I met who they're Russian immigrants, and they're trying to start a church here. And I met them through my fiance, but they impressed me so much that in the middle of all this work, I did a 6-minute video telling their story, and they've got a crowdsourcing. I think it's a GoFundMe, and I actually paid, you know, real cash to keep these people going. When I heard the story, I just thought it was the most American story I've ever heard in my life, ever. And I'm going to run it probably Friday, and I'm going to run it a couple times. You can hear me talking about that for the next week or so. These are people who came to America, are doing things the right way, are determined to make sure that other immigrants not only do things legally, but they do things patriotically. And they're making a lot of lives better. And I was so impressed that I put a significant amount of my weekend time, and I didn't have much of that either, into helping them out, and hopefully you'll feel the same way as I do, because I think the video that we did for them was very, very cool. Victoria is saying, tell them about Twitch. I don't know what Twitch is either, but you know what? I'll look it up. I'm going to just put it down here. These kids with their crazy internet things, you know, I was on the Google, and I was on the Facebook, and now I'm on the YouTube, and I want somebody to get me to the Google so that I can get my email. Yeah. Anyway, hey, that was kind of fun and a little more laid back tonight than usual. I think starting to sound like an FM host at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, now let's listen to some of these some of the deep tracks here from this. Moody Blues album, was released in 1972. I think I'll put you right to sleep. Anyway, Twitch is only for gaming. Okay, whatever. Yeah, Twitch apparently is for gaming streams. Well, then I'll do some gaming streams. By God, I'm not completely incompetent noob. I'm usually about halfway through the stack on first-person shooters, and so we'll do some of that. Whatever it takes, man. Anyway, I think that'll probably wrap it up for, 143 today? I want to say episode 143. Just check. How about that? 143 episodes, and this fairly low-key one was a little under 2 hours. Not too bad. I hate to have to cancel, like I did last week. I really genuinely do, and I only do it when it's like, it's either cancel this or the world comes to an end. There's just stuff that has to get out the door. But in any event, it's fun to be here. Hope as many of you as you can. Don't say Star Citizen, Matt Lloyd. I'll be here for another hour. I hope that that many of you get to continue to watch in the morning on Bill Whittle Live. I'm enjoying that very much. It's always good to see familiar faces out there. And I know that the Stratosphere Loungers, I could see in the comments from Bill Whittle Live, were saying, boy, I hope that Stratosphere Lounge doesn't turn into this. Nope. Stratosphere Lounge, we tried that for 3 or 4 episodes with our backdrop, And this is what the Stratosphere launch is going to be looking like for the rest of time. Okay, that's it for me. You guys be careful out there. It's always good to talk to you. I always love hearing the comments, and I know many, thousands of people watch this on YouTube afterwards. If you've never done it live, I can highly recommend it. It's really kind of fun. And if you want to make a donation or a membership, you can just go to billwhittle.com, and you can do that just exactly like that. Okay, well, I'm going to load this graphic here, and I'm going to assume that things work. This is not friendly software, but if it's simple, I can probably manage it. So until next time, I will see you for episode 144. And until then, be careful, have fun, and take care of each other.